Hey guys, tonight we are slipping quietly into the daily life of a Han Dynasty market town. Imagine the air still damp from night, your sandals pressing against packed earth courtyards, and faint wood smoke rising in curling ribbons. You probably won't survive this world if you wander in with modern expectations. No morning coffee machine, no Wi-Fi, and certainly no drive-through breakfast burritos. Instead, you wake where everyone else does, in a walled courtyard home that creaks awake with the slow rhythm of dawn. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're tuning in right now, go ahead and post your location and the local time down in the comments. I always love seeing where you're listening from. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're lying on a woven mat, the kind made from reeds or bamboo strips. It's cool against your skin, though in winter you'd wish it had more padding. The air smells faintly of last night's smoke, still caught in the rafters. Outside in the courtyard, the first sounds are small. A broom scratching across stone, a sleepy child carrying kindling, the muffled cough of an elder whose lungs are as familiar with smoke as yours will soon be. You rise. No one in this world sleeps in. Han society values rhythm, order, and getting on with things. Hearth fires must be stoked, rice gruel must be cooked, and chickens, if you're lucky enough to have them, must be fed. Historians still argue whether the majority of households ate rice daily or relied more on millet, but either way, the thin porridge waiting in the pot is more fuel than feast. The household is a machine of many small duties. The eldest woman oversees the kitchen, while younger ones sweep and fetch water. Men, if not yet gone to the fields or shops, gather tools, check nets, or mutter about yesterday's tax records. You, meanwhile, shuffle to the well in the corner of the courtyard. The rope creaks as the bucket descends, water splashes faintly, and your reflection briefly stares back before vanishing into ripples. Breakfast smells faintly sour, but it's warm, and in a world without refrigerators, warm is safe. A pot bubbles with millet gruel, maybe flavored with a sliver of pickled vegetable if your family has stored well. If you're part of a wealthier household, you might sprinkle salt, worth far more here than you'd expect, or add a spoonful of bean paste. The children don't complain. Food is food, and complaining earns you another chore. As you eat, a rooster crows, though frankly he's late. The town itself is already stirring. Somewhere beyond the walls, the market's first stalls are being unpacked. The air carries scents you'll soon know by heart: fermented sauces, dried fish, and the earthy smell of oiled wood from carts being rolled into position. You glance around your courtyard. The walls are daubed with plaster, patched in places where time has worn them thin. A dog, thin but loyal, nosed its way into a corner looking for scraps. The tiled roof above still gleams damp with dew. It's not palatial, but in a time when many lived with even less, this small courtyard is your anchor. The family hierarchy feels heavy even before you step outside. Elders command, younger ones obey, and you play your role. Yet there's comfort in the routine. Sweep, cook, carry, wash. You might wish for a bit of leisure, but this repetition is also survival. As you finish the gruel, you wipe the bowl with a sliver of bread-like flat cake. If you're very lucky, there's a leftover dumpling. Yesterday's treat turned into today's treasure. Your younger cousin eyes it, but you get there first. The sun climbs a little higher, not rushing. Han days are long and deliberate. You sling a basket over your back, one that smells faintly of dried reeds, and prepare to step into the streets. But before leaving, you pause at the doorway. Hanging there, half faded, is a charm inked on yellow paper. Talisman against illness, wealth, misfortune. Really, a bit of everything. Its edges are curled, its characters smudged, yet no one dares take it down. And then the wooden gate squeals open. The town awaits you. Somewhere, pigs squeal, carts creak, and the smell of soy paste hits the morning air like a slow wave. You tug your sleeves straight and step out into the dawn, into a market town where every life is visible and every day begins the same. A final glance backward. Inside the courtyard, smoke still drifts upward, caught in sunlight, curling away like the last threads of sleep. Out here, though, the day has begun, and you are part of it, ready or not. You step onto the street, and it feels as though the entire town is shaking itself awake alongside you. The packed earth road is uneven, full of footprints pressed deep by yesterday's traffic, carts, sandals, and the occasional hoofprint where a stubborn mule refused to move. Already the market streets are humming, a low vibration of voices and wheels that will swell into something close to music. Vendors are rolling out mats woven from rushes, the kind that make an instant shop wherever they're unrolled. You pass a woman balancing 2 baskets from a yoke, her shoulders hardened to the pressure, her stride steady. The baskets themselves are small treasure chests, one full of turnips, another full of small clay jars sealed with cloth. She sets them down with the practiced grace of someone who has done this every day of her adult life. The air smells busy. You catch the sharpness of raw garlic, the brine of fish just lifted from a river not far away, and a faint sweetness from candied hawthorn fruits someone's already hawking to children. A stall keeper shakes the dust from a scale, its brass pans flashing briefly in the morning sun. Nearby, a young man is splashing water over cabbages, making them gleam so that buyers believe they're fresher than they actually are. This is not chaos, it's choreography. People know where to set up. The fishmongers cluster near each other, their loud calls overlapping like competing roosters. The cloth sellers prefer shaded corners where bolts of silk and hemp won't bleach in the sun. Spice merchants claim the spots downwind, knowing full well their wares will perfume the entire block. And you thread yourself among them, letting the soundscape fill you. A child tugs at your sleeve, offering skewered chestnuts roasted black at the edges. His hands are filthy, but his grin is bright, and you give in. The chestnut is hot enough to sting your tongue, but it's also smoky, sweet, and, dare you admit it, better than the bland millet porridge you started with. Over there, a man is already shouting about today's catch. Fish flop on a board, their scales still flashing with silver. He exaggerates their weight, slapping his hand on the table, while his wife, clearly the sharper one, manages the actual transactions. A scholar standing nearby complains the prices are unjust, though you can tell from the ink stains on his sleeve he wouldn't know the value of a fish if it swam into his bathtub. Historians still argue whether market cries in Han towns followed formal rules, or were just improvised sales pitches. Some records suggest authorities tried to limit noise, believing too much shouting invited disorder. If that's true, they failed spectacularly here. The chorus of voices is relentless. Cabbage for a coin, fish 2 for 1, needles polished and sharp. A donkey brays as if joining in, and honestly, he might be the loudest merchant of all. Quirkier still, you spot a vendor who's clearly given up on shouting, and has instead trained his parrot to cry prices. "Beans, beans," the bird screeches, startling a group of school children. The beans themselves look mediocre, but the parrot wins attention. Clever marketing, really. And yet, beneath the humor, survival pulses. For many families, today's sales mean tonight's dinner. A stall that fails may mean a supper of nothing but water and thin gruel. So while the atmosphere feels like a festival, there's an edge to it, a quiet pressure in every exchange. Your own basket grows heavier. You've bought a strip of dried tofu, a bunch of scallions, and a little flask of oil. You pass up the fermented fish paste, not because it isn't useful, but because you're not quite brave enough for the smell this early in the morning. A group of elderly men squat on low stools, playing a board game scratched into the ground. They laugh too loudly, their coins clinking with each move. They're probably ignoring their wives' errands. But isn't that part of the charm? As the sun climbs, the crowd thickens. Silk sleeves brush against coarse hemp tunics. Children weave through gaps like fish in water. You feel the town's pulse here, steady, rhythmic, and utterly ordinary. And in that ordinariness lies the extraordinary. Thousands of lives stitched together by rice, by cabbage, by haggled coins. When you finally step away from the noise, you glance back at the swelling rows of stalls. The market has transformed from empty street to beating heart in less than an hour. You know it will stay this way until dusk, the voices rising and falling like the tide. And you, woven into it all, carry your basket on, ready for the next rhythm of the day. You walk farther down the street, and the smells of fish and garlic give way to something heavier, the warm, dusty odor of grain. The air itself feels thicker, as if powdered millet hangs in suspension, coating your nostrils. This is the district where the granaries stand, where the state and the market collide in that most unromantic of places, tax day. The building looms larger than most, a squat rectangle of stamped earth with a timber frame, its roof pitched sharply to keep out rain. A few guards stand outside, spears upright, faces blank, trying their best to look intimidating, even though one of them is clearly suppressing a yawn. You fall into line with the others, a snake of people stretching from the entrance down the lane, baskets and sacks slung across their backs. Inside, the process is both tedious and strangely mesmerizing. Farmers shuffle forward, unload their sacks of millet, and watch as an official scoops it into a large bronze scale. The pans creak as they dip, and weights shaped like turtles or squares are added until the balance tips. A clerk records the figures onto bamboo slips, the dry scratching of the brush punctuated by the occasional sigh. The Han Dynasty bureaucracy was nothing if not thorough. Taxes were measured not just in coins, but often in grain, silk, or labor. It kept the empire fed and the armies clothed. But for you, standing in line, it feels like your morning is evaporating in slow motion. Historians still argue whether peasants resented this system deeply or accepted it as a dull fact of life. Judging by the blank stares around you, resentful acceptance might be the best answer. There's a rhythm to it, though. Sack down, scoop in, balance tilt, slip written. The line shuffles forward a step, and the cycle repeats. A child whines, tugging at her mother's sleeve. An older man behind you coughs so deeply you wonder if he'll collapse, but he keeps his place. No one wants to lose their spot. Here's your quirky observation for the day. One official has clearly taken a liking to doodling. Instead of simply tallying the slips, he's drawn a little duck in the margin. Maybe it's a way to stay sane during endless counting. You wonder if some future archaeologist centuries later will find that slip and decide ducks held profound religious significance. At last, your turn. You place your sack on the scale, The official frowns as the pan dips, adds weights, then grunts in satisfaction. The clerk scratches numbers onto a slip and tucks it into a bamboo tube. Your contribution to the empire is now recorded, anonymous among thousands, but vital all the same. Stepping outside again, the light feels blinding after the granary's dimness. The line behind you stretches even longer now, peasants muttering under their breath. A mule brays as if complaining on their behalf. You take a moment to breathe, the taste of dust still clinging to your tongue. And yet, despite the monotony, there's something impressive here. The very grain you just surrendered might be shipped hundreds of miles downriver to feed soldiers on a frontier you'll never see. It might end up in the belly of a courtier in Chang'an, who will never think of the sweating farmer who carried it here. The system is impersonal, but it connects everyone, peasants, soldiers, scholars, emperors, in one chain of survival. On your way out, you pass a pile of discarded husks, already attracting sparrows. A boy crouches nearby, scooping up bits of grain that slipped through. His hands are fast, practiced. No one scolds him. Everyone knows nothing is wasted in this world. You sling your now empty sack over your shoulder, lighter but no less weary. The morning has slipped by in waiting, in measuring, in the small indignity of being counted. Still, the town waits beyond, buzzing with voices, clattering with trade. You adjust your grip and step away from the granary's shadow, back into the stream of ordinary life. You leave behind the granary's dust and step into a part of town that hums with a different kind of energy. The air smells less of grain and more of damp leaves, mulberry leaves to be exact. Here, in clustered courtyards and long, low sheds, silk is being coaxed out of worms, spun by nimble fingers, and woven into fabrics that might travel farther than you ever will. The sound is softer than the clatter of the market. No shouting vendors here, but it's constant. The gentle scrape of thread being reeled, the occasional cough, the faint creak of looms. You peer through a doorway and see women bent over shallow baskets where pale silkworms writhe like spilled noodles. They munch away at mulberry leaves with a sound like soft rain. It's both hypnotic and slightly unsettling, like listening to 1,000 tiny mouths chewing at once. Silkworm tending is delicate work. If the air is too damp, mold creeps in. If too dry, the worms wither. One sneeze, one careless hand, could undo weeks of feeding. The women here seem to know this instinctively. Their motions are economical, practiced, as though they've spent years watching the rhythm of worms. Historians still argue whether silk work was considered empowering or burdensome for women in Han society. Some records suggest households could gain significant wealth from silk production. Others hint at long, exhausting hours with little recognition. Looking at the faces here, lined, focused, but also occasionally breaking into chatter, you sense it's both. Toil and opportunity in the same breath. Your quirky tidbit. Mulberry leaves were sometimes believed to have medicinal properties, and children caught stealing them might be scolded not just for theft, but for ruining the health of the worms. Imagine explaining to your mother that you're not grounded. You're just guilty of upsetting insects. Farther inside the shed, reels turn as threads are unwound from cocoons boiled in hot water. The smell of wet silk clings to the air, faintly sweet and oddly metallic. Young girls, perhaps no older than 10, sit cross-legged, their small fingers quick at teasing out strands. Their chatter drifts between gossip and song. A grandmother corrects one girl's posture with a firm tap, muttering that a crooked back will ruin the thread. Beyond the reeling, the looms begin. Wooden frames stretch high, with petals that clack and beams that thud. The rhythm is steady, almost musical. Clack, pull, slide, beat. You could almost fall asleep to it, if not for the occasional curse when a thread snaps. Patterns emerge slowly, tiny diamonds and waves, the weaver's imagination carried into cloth. You trail your fingers along a finished bolt of silk hanging nearby. It's smoother than anything else in this town, gleaming faintly even in the dim light. This cloth might travel westward along routes that stretch into deserts and mountains, ending up in the hands of Persians or Romans, who've never even heard of the Han Dynasty. And yet, for the woman weaving here, it's just Tuesday. Outside, mulberry trees line the edges of the lane, their leaves plucked daily. Children scamper to collect dropped ones, stuffing them into baskets. A boy waves at you proudly, showing off a leaf shaped like a heart, as if it's the funniest discovery of the day. You smile and move on, your ears still full of the steady clack of looms. Workshops like these are the quiet arteries of the town, less visible than the noisy market, but no less vital. Silk is wealth, silk is status, silk is taxes, and every thread begins here, in the patience of women, in the endless appetite of worms. By the time you step back into the street, the sun has climbed higher, warming the tiled roofs and sharpening shadows. You catch yourself humming the rhythm of the loom without meaning to, clack, pull, slide, beat, carrying the song of the silk workers into the rest of your day. You duck beneath the low lintel of a tea stall, the kind with rough benches, earthen jars stacked by the door, and steam rising in delicate curls from clay kettles. The air is heavy with roasted leaves, a little grassy, a little bitter, the sort of smell that promises warmth and conversation more than luxury. Merchants gather here first thing in the morning, voices carrying across the room in half whispers, half boasts. One talks of a shipment of salt that arrived upriver before the tax inspectors knew it. Another swears his cousin saw a foreign envoy, barbarian to some, curiosity to others, walking in embroidered boots. Between the boasts, there is gossip. Which magistrate was seen slipping into a courtesan's quarter, which guild elder is ill, which family suddenly bought a new mule. A boy no older than 10 moves between the tables, balancing a tray of cups glazed in plain brown slip. He wipes them on his sleeve before pouring, as if polish could be borrowed from sweat. You watch as a pair of farmers exchange coins for their drinks, 3 coppers for a shared pot. For them, tea isn't fashion, it's fuel, hot liquid that cuts through cold mornings and tired bones. Just across the street, the tavern doors are already open. Too early, perhaps, but who decides when rice wine should flow? Inside, the atmosphere is heavier. Smoke clings to beams blackened by years of fire. The smell of pickled fish mixes with the sour tang of wine, and voices rumble low. Tavern talk is different. Less gossip, more deals, sometimes arguments. One table slaps the wood in laughter, another murmurs about debts, a third huddles close, as if the air itself might betray their plans. Between the tea stalls and taverns, you see 2 sides of the same town, one powered by gentle leaves, the other by sharp spirits. Both hum with life, with exchange, with that peculiar human need to share words over cups. The smell of clay hits you before the sound does. Down a side lane, where the ground is perpetually spattered with slip and dust, the potters squat at their wheels. Bare feet press the treadles. Palms guide the whirling lumps of earth into bowls, jars, lamps. The rhythm is hypnotic. The scrape of wet hands, the whoosh of spinning, the faint hum as one vessel after another rises into being. Their kilns roar nearby, fed with bundles of reed and wood scraps, the flames licking upward like impatient tongues. It's hot work, dangerous too. One bad firing and a month's labor cracks into useless shards. Still, this alley is the town's lifeline. No house can function without pots for cooking, jars for storing grain, lamps for chasing shadows. One potter leans back, wiping sweat, and jokes that he's never eaten from a bowl he didn't make himself. You can't tell if he's proud or just tired. Across the square, the cobblers ply their quieter craft. Their shops smell of leather and resin. Strips of hide dangle like ribbons, stitched soles pile high. A boy presses an awl through thick leather, tongue sticking out in concentration. Shoes aren't cheap. Farmers patch the same pair for years, but the town cannot walk barefoot. Even officials with their silk robes need sturdy boots for muddy streets. Historians still argue whether cobblers belonged to formal guilds or operated in loose associations, but here, the sense of camaraderie is obvious. One cobbler passes a spare awl to his neighbor. Another lends thread when a spool runs dry. Guild rhythms shape the day. Bells don't mark the hours, but routines do. Potters begin with the dawn, using morning cool to center clay before the sun bakes their yards. Cobblers work steadily by lamplight, since leather listens best to patient hands. Their shared lunches, simple rice balls, pickled radish, a sip of weak beer, become tiny feasts. And always, the gossip continues. Who paid late? Who's courting the magistrate's niece? Who secretly bought foreign lacquer bowls instead of local ware? One fringe tidbit makes you smirk. Some people believe cracked pots can ward off spirits if buried under thresholds. It's the kind of superstition potters happily encourage, because every broken piece suddenly has value. You almost laugh imagining a family proudly shoving a chipped bowl into the ground like treasure. By mid-afternoon, the guild lanes hum like beehives. Mallets strike pegs into soles. Wheels spin, kilns roar. The market town isn't just selling things. It's constantly remaking itself, vessel by vessel, step by step. You breathe in the clay dust and leather scrap smell and realize this is what permanence feels like, even in a place where everything eventually breaks. The scent of cooked millet hits you before you see the vendors. Midday in the market town is when your stomach takes charge, dragging you down alleys where steam clouds rise like banners and the clatter of bowls drowns out serious bargaining. Food, after all, is the heartbeat of this place. You pause at a stall where skewers of lamb hiss over a charcoal brazier. The vendor flips them with the speed of someone who's done this 1,000 times. Fat drips and sparks fly, and your stomach growls loud enough that a child next to you giggles. He holds a skewer with both hands, chewing meat that probably cost his family half a day's wage. Still, it's worth it, because in towns like this, eating street food is not just about filling your belly. It's about being part of the bustle, soaking up flavors from far-flung places. Further along, women ladle steaming congee into earthen bowls, garnishing with spring onions and salted radish. The porridge is bland but comforting, like an edible lullaby. Nearby, baskets overflow with sticky rice wrapped in leaves. Some are plain, some stuffed with beans or pork fat, all tied up neatly with twine. A merchant boasts that his recipe came from the south, where the rice grows taller than men. Historians still argue whether such culinary boasts reflected real trade or just tall tales to impress gullible customers. Either way, you find yourself believing him. For now, not all flavors are for everyone. At one corner, a woman sells fermented bean curd so pungent it could double as a weapon. Locals swear by it, dipping vegetables into the crumbly paste with delight. You, on the other hand, can't decide if you're hungry or under attack. But fringe tidbits like this are exactly what make the market vivid. Even recipes survive as echoes of identity. Families passing down techniques as carefully as they would heirlooms. Children dart through the crowd, clutching sesame cakes, while old men sip millet beer from clay cups. The beer is weak, more like a liquid bread than a punch to the head, but it makes conversation flow. A cobbler you saw earlier slouches at a table, tipsy after only 2 cups, loudly proclaiming that he could fix the magistrate's sandals better than any overpaid shoemaker in the capital. No one takes him seriously, but everyone laughs, because markets are where words, like food, are meant to spill freely, and the jokes practically serve themselves. One vendor insists his dumplings can cure backaches. Another claims her noodles will help you live longer than the emperor. You buy a skewer anyway, not for the health benefits, but because sometimes you'd rather chew than argue. By the time you finish your meal, the market feels like it has grown louder, denser, more alive. Stomachs full, people grow easier to bargain with, tempers mellow, and the rhythm of trade flows smoother. Food doesn't just feed bodies here, it oils the gears of the town. Without these steaming pots and clattering bowls, the marketplace would sputter like an empty stomach. Just when you think the market is only about things you can chew or wear, the sound of hooves changes the scene. Horses clop through a wide clearing near the edge of town, their coats brushed sleek, tails bound, eyes bright and wary. This is the animal trade quarter, and it thrums with a different kind of energy. Half excitement, half controlled chaos. A groom leads a tall bay mare around in a circle, praising her strength while casually mentioning that she descended from stock used in the emperor's stables. You're not sure if he's exaggerating, but the animal's muscled flank and steady trot do the convincing. Buyers lean in, stroke noses, pinch withers, check hooves. Deals are struck with more handshakes than words, because everyone knows that a bad horse will betray you faster than a bad pot or bad shoe. Camels draw even more attention. Laden with jingling bells and colorful cloths, they squat with disdainful patience, chewing cud while handlers shout about their endurance. A camel can carry heavy loads for days, but it also has the personality of an angry bureaucrat, aloof, stubborn, and likely to spit when displeased. Historians still argue whether Han markets had permanent camel yards, or just occasional visits from caravans. But today, you find plenty of evidence in the huffing beasts before you. On the fringe side, someone offers a pair of geese tied together by the legs. The vendor swears they'll keep watch better than any dog. Supposedly, Roman geese once saved their city from invaders by honking. You smirk, because while no one here has heard of Rome's geese, they believe geese can shriek loud enough to scare off burglars. Imagine being robbed by a thief only to be saved by 2 angry birds. Nearby, goats bleat, pigs snort, and chickens scatter underfoot. Children chase them half-heartedly, while mothers scold them for stirring up dust. The noise is cacophonous, like someone set an orchestra loose with no conductor. But it's the sound of rural wealth. Animals aren't just meat or milk. They're investments, dowries, status symbols. A prosperous family doesn't brag about coins. They point to their fat ox in the shed. One trader mutters a joke that farmers love their animals more than their children because at least the animals listen. Another quips back that children eventually fetch water, while oxen just chew cud. You chuckle, and so do they. In this quarter, humor is as common as manure, which unfortunately also litters the ground. You step carefully because while history may be boring, it still stinks. As you leave, a mule brays so loudly it startles even the camels. The sound echoes off the tiled roofs, blending with laughter, shouts, and bargaining cries from the rest of the market. In this place, animals aren't background, they're participants. Each transaction a reminder that life in the Han world runs on 4 legs as much as 2. The farther you wander from the main square, the less shouting you hear. The noise of merchants and clattering hooves fades into a quieter hum. Here lies the section of artisans who deal not in pots or leather, but in paint, ink, and silk. Their stalls feel different, less urgent, more refined, though still tinged with the smell of glue, dye, and damp parchment. A painter sits before a long strip of silk, brush poised delicately between thumb and finger. Each stroke builds a mountain, a river, a lone crane bending its neck. He pauses often, as if listening to the air, and dips his brush into ink ground painstakingly from an ink stick rubbed against stone. Historians still argue whether market painters like him created works for beauty or mostly for copying official decrees and charms. Whatever the case, you watch as he sells a half-finished scroll to a minor official who insists it will look distinguished in his front hall. Across from him, silk vendors unfurl bolts dyed in rich reds and delicate blues. The fabric ripples like water, catching sunlight in shifting waves. Silk is the Han Dynasty's calling card, its most famous export. Yet here in this small market town, it's treated with equal parts awe and suspicion. Too expensive for common folk, too delicate for fieldwork. It's both treasure and temptation. A fringe tidbit says some families only own a single silk handkerchief, passed down generations as a wedding token, never once used for fear of staining it. You imagine inheriting a square of cloth and being told, "Congratulations, don't you dare sneeze on it." Scribes are nearby, bent over bamboo slips. They jot notes, draft contracts, and for a fee compose letters for those who can't write. Literacy is rare, but demand for words is constant. One man dictates a love letter in whispers, blushing furiously as the scribe calmly pens phrases like, "Her eyebrows are like willow branches in spring." You fight the urge to laugh. Romance outsourced to a professional feels equal parts tragic and efficient. Color dyes the air here too. Indigo vats bubble, and bolts of hemp cloth are dunked and wrung, hung across ropes like oversized prayer flags. Children run between them, staining their tunics, earning scoldings that sound suspiciously practiced. The dyers boast of recipes guarded like family secrets. One might use onion skins, another beetles, another something they simply call mystery bark. The actual colors don't differ much, but pride is half the trade. The whole quarter has a softer rhythm. While the potter's wheels spin and the butchers shout, the artisans here work with quieter concentration. Yet their goods ripple far beyond the market square. A scroll carried off by a traveler may hang in a distant hall. A bolt of silk may make its way onto the silk road, whispered into foreign courts. And one silly love letter may outlast both the lover and the beloved, tucked away in a family chest, its characters still sharp long after feelings fade. As you step back, the smell of ink mingles with dye, a reminder that color and word are luxuries, but luxuries people in this town will always reach for, even if it means bargaining away half their grain. The market shifts as you turn another corner, and suddenly the air is thicker with incense and smoke than with steam or dye. Here, in a quieter cluster of stalls, herbalists and medicine men set up their goods. Wooden boxes line their tables, each filled with roots, dried leaves, powders, and things you aren't entirely sure you'd want to ingest. The air smells sharp and earthy, half comforting, half alarming. A wiry old apothecary rattles a bamboo scoop through drawers of ginseng, licorice root, and chrysanthemum petals. He prescribes with the confidence of someone who has spent a lifetime balancing humors, though you suspect he sometimes makes things up on the spot. A farmer coughs twice, and the apothecary declares it's a wind imbalance. He pours dried orange peel and powdered ginger into a packet, ties it neatly, and charges enough to feed a family for 2 days. You can't help but smirk. His real medicine seems to be salesmanship. Another healer is less polished, but more theatrical. He displays jars containing snakes coiled in alcohol, scorpions stiff as twigs, and a lizard that looks vaguely offended about being pickled. He claims each one has potent properties: snake wine for vigor, scorpion powder for joint pain, lizard oil for, well, something. Historians still argue whether these remedies had any effect beyond terrifying the patient, but customers line up anyway. You figure belief is half the cure. Fringe tidbit. One stall advertises crocodile dung as sunscreen. The vendor insists it keeps your skin pale and your youth intact. You nearly laugh out loud, imagining yourself smearing reptile leavings on your cheeks before a sunny stroll. Pale beauty standards may be timeless, but that method feels like history's worst face mask. Further down, a woman arranges bundles of fresh herbs: mint, mugwort, peonies. Her tone is gentler, her advice less about miracle cures and more about teas to ease sleep, soups to strengthen the blood, leaves to soothe fever. Locals trust her more than the flashy men with jars, and you sense that her knowledge is grounded in generations of practice. And then there are the charms, little slips of paper brushed with spells, hung with red string. They're sold not by doctors, but by wandering monks, who murmur that sickness is as much spiritual as physical. A worried mother buys one, tucking it into her child's tunic as insurance. Whether it works or not, the act itself is comfort, and sometimes comfort is the best medicine. The quarter hums with this mix of science, superstition, and theater. Some powders might truly help a cough. Some pastes might poison you faster than cure you. Historians still argue whether early Chinese medicine was proto-science or elaborate placebo. But walking through, you realize something else. In a time without hospitals, without pharmacies, this marketplace is the community's clinic, chaotic though it may be. You leave the scent of herbs and smoke behind, grateful for your own health, but oddly reassured by the fact that even 2,000 years ago, people were chasing the same thing: relief from pain, a little extra time, and maybe, if possible, a miracle in a packet. The sound of flowing water draws you next, mingling with the distant clatter of carts and the occasional bray of a mule. You follow the canal-side path, where porters and pack horses jostle along the narrow banks, loading and unloading goods from barges that rock lazily in the current. The canal is the town's artery, carrying everything from rice and silk to firewood and dried fish. Barges creak as they shift under heavy loads. A man barks orders to 2 porters hauling sacks of grain aboard a flat-bottomed vessel. The ropes groan and snap slightly as bundles are shifted into position. You notice the smell of water mixed with mud, algae, and fish. It's pungent but alive. The smell of commerce moving slowly, inevitably, downstream. Historians still argue whether Han-era barges were primarily for military transport or civilian trade. But here in the market town, there is no question. They serve everyone. A fringe observation catches your eye. One barge carries large jars marked with red ink, rumored to hold fermented plum wine. Apparently, some townspeople sneak small sips before reaching their destination, claiming it makes the long journey easier. You wonder how much of this is taste, and how much is just pretending you're braver than the river currents. Across the canal, pack horses plod in rhythm, bells jingling softly as they pull carts laden with timber, firewood, and woven mats. Children dart between the animals, herding them with playful shouts while merchants shout back, trying to maintain order. A mule trips over a bundle of rope, sending a cascade of clatter across the path, and the crowd sighs collectively, a minor disruption in the town's choreography. The canals are also where messages travel. A courier ducks into the shade of a boat cabin, handing a bamboo scroll to a merchant who nods in acknowledgement. Inked slips of information crisscross the waterways, faster than a foot messenger could ever manage. Communication is as vital as trade. The market would grind to a halt without it. You pause to watch the interplay of water, wood, and people. The current carries away small debris, twigs, leaves, a lost sandal, but the human rhythm remains steady. Barges shift, porters grunt, ropes hiss, bells jingle, and the town continues its quiet, relentless commerce. By midday, the sun glints off the water in tiny, dancing fragments. You feel yourself lulled by the sway of the boats, the slow creak of the timbers, and the gentle, predictable chaos of trade. It is exhausting, yes, but also mesmerizing. This is the pulse of the Han Dynasty market town, and you are walking right along its veins, feeling the life of goods, animals, and people flow past you. The sun begins its slow drift westward, and the shadows stretch long across the cobblestones. You wander into the district where the town's craftspeople focus on metalwork and woodworking, a symphony of strikes and clanks greeting you before you even glimpse the workshops. The scent here is sharp. Hot iron, sawdust, and the faint tang of molten bronze, inviting if you have a nose for industry. A blacksmith hammers at an anvil, sparks leaping in tiny arcs like miniature fireworks. Each strike resonates through the chest, a deep, satisfying echo. He's forging knives, chisels, and perhaps a ceremonial bell for the temple. A young apprentice fans the embers with a clay bellows, careful not to smother the flame. You can't help but notice the rhythm. Hammer down, lift, strike again. Historians still argue whether blacksmith guilds were formally organized or simply bound by tradition and apprenticeship, but the precision here suggests a lineage of skill honed over generations. Nearby, a woodcarver shapes long planks into furniture or frames, the rasp of his knife steady and hypnotic. Tiny curls of wood spiral off the blade, accumulating like soft snow at his feet. Fringe detail. He occasionally hides small carvings of animals in his furniture, supposedly to bring luck to the buyer. You grin at the thought of someone sitting on a chair and being unknowingly blessed, or mildly startled, by a hidden rabbit carved into the armrest. Children peek through doorways, mesmerized by the smoke and sparks. A boy drops a piece of scrap metal and flinches as it clatters, earning a grin from the blacksmith, who points to a safe corner to retrieve it. These workshops are as much classrooms as they are production spaces, teaching observation, patience, and respect for material. Elsewhere, bellcasters pour molten bronze into molds, the liquid metal hissing and spitting as it meets the cold earth. The molten bells will travel to temples or homes, each tone a product of precise measurement and careful cooling. You pause to watch the bubbling liquid, imagining the first sound that will ring from these forms centuries from now. Evening approaches, and the work slows. Apprentices sweep, blacksmiths clean their tools, and wood shavings are gathered for the fire. You feel a quiet satisfaction walking past the workshops. A day's labor captured in metal and wood, skill and sweat transforming raw materials into objects that will endure long after the craftspeople rest. In a way, the town thrives not just on trade, but on the silent legacy of artisans shaping the world one strike, one shave, one pour at a time. The late afternoon sun casts long shadows across the narrow lanes, and you find yourself near the town's water mills. Here, the gentle rumble of grinding stone replaces the clatter of the market and the hammering of workshops. The air smells of wet stone and grain dust, faintly sweet, faintly sour, the aroma of transformation. You approach the first mill, where a wooden wheel turns slowly in the flowing stream, its paddles splashing rhythmically. Inside, stones grind rice and wheat into flour. A miller, apron dusted white, turns the grain with practiced hands, coaxing the wheel into perfect pace. Historians still argue whether these water mills were primarily innovations for efficiency or symbols of local pride. But standing here, you feel the quiet genius of human ingenuity. A fringe observation. Some millers reportedly added tiny charms to the machinery, pieces of jade or carved symbols, believing that spirits favored well-tended stones. You imagine tiny ghostly accountants nodding at each carefully turned grain. The thought makes you smile as you watch the flour cascade into waiting sacks. Children run along the canal bank, tossing sticks and laughing, while the mill dogs bark in intermittent approval. Farmers shuffle sacks of grain toward the wheel, the sun glinting off polished bowls of water carried by apprentices. The process is slow but steady. Pour, grind, gather, repeat. It's an almost meditative rhythm, a stark contrast to the frenzied barter of the main market. Nearby, a miller demonstrates the finer points of husking rice. He tosses kernels onto a board and beats them gently with a pestle, separating husks from grains. You watch the motions, precise, repetitive, almost dance-like, and realize that survival in this town depends as much on subtle skill as it does on strength or shouting. By the time you leave, the sun has softened to a golden haze. The mill's water trickles blend with the distant shouts of vendors and the occasional bray of a mule returning home. You feel the pulse of the town in a new way, not just in voices and footsteps, but in the steady, reassuring grind of stone on grain, the slow alchemy that feeds the people day after day. You linger a moment longer, breathing in the damp, sweet air, letting it settle into your chest. There's comfort here in persistence, in machinery quietly doing its work, while life buzzes around it. And as you move onward, the memory of the water's soft, eternal rhythm stays with you, marking another beat in the heart of the Han market town. Evening drapes itself over the town, softening the harsh edges of the market. You wander toward the edges of the square where musicians and performers set up, a small enclave of amusement tucked amid the ordinary bustle. The air smells faintly of roasting chestnuts and the smoke from lamps, and the atmosphere is lighter, tinged with laughter and anticipation. A pair of shadow puppeteers have strung up a silk screen, their hands deftly moving flat figures that flicker in the candlelight. Children crowd the front, noses nearly pressed to the fabric, while parents chuckle softly behind them. The puppeteers' voices narrate tales of legendary generals, mythical beasts, and mischievous spirits. Fringe tidbit. Some puppets are rumored to be blessed with charms for fortune and protection. You imagine a boy taking one home secretly, hoping to outwit his parents or, more realistically, the family dog. Nearby, musicians pluck strings on zithers and flutes, the notes blending with the soft murmur of the crowd. A young woman sings quietly, her melody carrying across the square, low and soothing, almost like a lullaby. Even merchants lingering after their day's work pause, resting against carts and benches, letting the music wash over them. Historians still argue whether these performances were mere entertainment or served as subtle instruction in morality, heroism, or social norms. Watching, you suspect it's a little of both. Street vendors take advantage of the lingering crowd. Skewers sizzle, fried dumplings puff, and the smell of sesame cookies drifts temptingly. You grab a simple snack, a piece of sticky rice wrapped in bamboo leaf, and watch the shadows of the performers dance across the cobblestones. The town, in this golden light, feels almost magical. A place of ordinary toil transformed by simple art and shared experience. One curious moment. A juggler tosses clay balls so expertly that no one notices until one slips, rolling into the feet of a sleepy dog. The audience gasps, then laughs, the dog unaffected, the performer's composure barely flickering. It's this combination of skill, humor, and unpredictability that makes the evening alive without being exhausting. As darkness deepens, lanterns glow along the streets, casting soft pools of light that stretch into alleys and over doorways. You notice families gathering in doorways, elders settling into stools with bowls of tea, children yawning but reluctant to leave the spectacle. Even in these quiet moments, the town pulses with life, the heartbeat of a day's labor ebbing into the calm rhythm of night. You take a deep breath, letting the sounds, smells, and sights settle in your mind. There is a satisfaction here, a day completed, a town alive, and a place where everyone, from puppeteer to miller to merchant, plays their part in the ongoing story of this market town. Night fully descends, folding the town into soft shadows. The market square is mostly quiet now, the last vendors packing up, the clatter of carts replaced by the occasional murmur of a night watchman. You follow the gentle glow of lanterns toward the town's residential courtyards, where the rhythm of life slows and becomes intimate. In the homes, families settle around low tables. Elderly parents lean back on wooden stools, sipping warm tea or nibbling on a few remaining dumplings. Children curl up on straw mats, yawning, their small hands clutching simple toys carved from wood or bone. The aroma of simmering soups lingers, faint but comforting, while the occasional squeak of a cat prowling for scraps punctuates the quiet. Historians still argue whether Han families truly followed rigid daily routines or allowed flexibility. But here, in this soft domestic glow, patterns of habit are evident. The evening meal, stories, quiet laughter, and gentle admonishments. A fringe observation. Some households place tiny charms above their doors. Red ribbons, carved talismans, even a small dried herb bundle. Supposedly, they ward off bad dreams, spirits, or minor misfortune. You smile at the thought of a sleeping child under a lantern's flicker, safe in the belief that these little tokens are enough to keep night terrors at bay. The streets outside are quieter, though not completely silent. Watchmen patrol in pairs, their boots thudding softly against the stone. Every so often, a drum beats from the watchtower, marking the hour with a resonant echo. It is comforting, almost like a heartbeat, reminding the town that even as the world sleeps, vigilance persists. Some corners of the town are reserved for reflection and leisure. Scholars sit in their courtyards, sipping tea and composing gentle verses under moonlight. Calligraphers practice steady strokes, their brushes moving with patient deliberation. Even the night has a rhythm here, not frantic, but intentional, a time for thought, for restoration, and for quiet pleasure. As you wander these last alleys, you feel the town exhale. The clatter fades, voices soften, animals settle. The day's labor, trade, gossip, and performance gradually dissolve into calm. You notice how even in a bustling market town, the night carries an enduring serenity, the promise of rest, the gentle continuity of life, and the quiet satisfaction of routines both grand and small. You pause to breathe in the cool night air, filled with faint scents of tea, wood smoke, and earth, and feel a profound sense of connection. For all its noise, bustle, and toil, the Han Dynasty market town is a living, breathing organism, and for tonight, you are a part of its gentle, unhurried heartbeat. The town has settled now. Lanterns glow softly in quiet courtyards, casting elongated shadows over stone and wood. The air carries faint traces of tea, roasting grain, and the subtle perfume of mulberry trees. You imagine the last children yawning into their pillows, the elders leaning back in thoughtful satisfaction, and the cats curling quietly by the hearth. The sounds of the day, hammering, clatter, bargaining, have softened into memory, replaced by gentle night whispers. Breathe in slowly. Let the images of the market fade into a soft blur. The spinning silk, the clanging of the blacksmith's hammer, the rhythmic grind of water mills, the flickering shadow puppets, and the warm glow of homes. Each corner of the town hums with its quiet life, now slowed, now still. There is reassurance in these routines, a quiet order beneath the chaos, and a subtle beauty in the way every person, animal, and object fits together into a living, breathing story. As you sink deeper into comfort, the small human details linger. The boy carefully collecting grain husks, the cobbler secretly hiding an animal carving in a chair, the miller whispering a charm to steady his wheel. These moments are tiny but persistent, evidence of care and ingenuity, of humor and patience. Even after centuries, their echoes reach you. Feel your own body soften, letting go of tension. Let the town's rhythm become your rhythm. Slowly, the market streets, the canals, the alleys, the workshops, and homes fade into a gentle haze. You are carried by the lull of daily life, soothed by its predictability and charm. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let the gentle heartbeat of the Han Dynasty market town guide you toward rest. Sleep comes easily here, among lanterns, laughter, and the enduring pulse of everyday life.